Hello everyone. Today we will be discussing stage 2 of the Understanding by Design template, which is Determine Acceptable Evidence. In this stage, we are going to create performance tasks and we are going to develop criteria by which we judge those performance tasks. We are going to also assign codes from the previous section 1 to these performance tasks. We are also going to generate evaluative criteria for other evidence, which is knowledge that isn't less important, but it's nice to know. And then finally, we are going to generate a grading rubric. Specifically, we are going to generate a holistic grading rubric, which can be used across different performance tasks. So let's get started. In stage 2, the first section we come across is Determine Acceptable Evidence under Performance Tasks. And in this section, we reach back into the previous section 1 and we grab our transfer goals and our meaning goals and the codes that we have assigned to them, and we put them right here. But before we do that, we're going to generate the task itself. The performance task is defined as how students demonstrate their understanding through complex performance. Students will show that they really understand by evidence of. So for instance, in this section right here, I generated a performance task for a section on Photoshop and basic Photoshop skills. My first performance task was working on their own. Students will edit raw images through the basic image editing process, including levels, brightness, contrast, color balance, cropping, gamma adjustments, and white balancing. Within this task, students must justify their usage of each tool or edit to the original, referencing how and why it affects the aesthetic or visual impact of the image. This sounds like a lot, but these performance tasks should be complex because they're showing the meaning making and transferring of this knowledge. Now, my codes will differ from your codes, but all of the codes that I correlated from my previous section went into this section right here. I put the actual verbatim verbiage of the performance task right here. And then I developed criteria for that task. For my particular task, it was evaluative criteria for this portion will focus on the interpretive nature of the student in relation to the image. Along with proper white balancing, has the student applied general rules of proper photography to the image? Additionally, has the student used proper cropping techniques or intentionally broke any design or photography rules to achieve a certain effect? Is the student aware of the aesthetic they are trying to create, and how deeply connected to the process is the student in terms of trying to create rather than simply take or complete an assignment? This is all in relation to knowledge that is bigger than just simple point A to point B. And this all does go right here again. So once we develop these performance tasks, which will take a while, we move on to the section titled Other Evidence. And the Other Evidence section, it is actually explained. Here you place assessments of knowledge, skill, standards, and other goals that are not otherwise assessed by performance tasks. Now these could be not simpler, but more cut and dried. And you can see in this section right, let me move the screen a little bit, but in this section right here, again, the codes go. So in my section, I used knowledge codes and transfer codes and some skill codes. These are a little bit more cut and dried. So in this section right here, the first section in other skills, which is titled Other Evidence, we can see it says, through what other evidence, quizzes, tests, academic prompts, observations, homework, journals, etc., will students demonstrate achievement of the desired results? So my first one for my Adobe Photoshop unit was students will take self-generated images and upload them into the Adobe Photoshop platform as a .raw file, then save them into various working formats, which is the same as JPEG, PNG, or TIFF. Then in this next section, we are again developing evaluative criteria. This is a section for criteria that will be used in each assessment to evaluate the attainment of the desired results. Again, these are not performance assessments as they were in the previous category, or performance tasks. These are a little more cut and dried. And it goes on to say, regardless of the formats of the assessment, what qualities are most important. So for my Adobe Photoshop other evidence assessment, my criteria are very simply, are the original files saved in the proper formats requested, and have the basic photograph techniques been observed, i.e. the rule of thirds and proper exposure. And we can go on from there, and you can develop as many or as few as is needed to make sure that your information is properly being learned. Going on from there, we reach the end of section 2. Again, this is very misleading because this is a lot of information to develop. And we are essentially generating a rubric for, whichever performance task you want. In my case, I used the last of my performance tasks, which was students will find images in the public sphere with imagery that is similar to the images they have created themselves, explaining how their images are similar, what kind of larger design projects they could be used for, and what feelings the design piece correlate with their own image. You can see this is very complex. So for criterion 1 in that task, my first criteria was, were the appropriate images found? An exemplary performance of that criteria would be images were complex and added significantly to the design piece of the ad campaign and were of central focus to the viewer. And then we move in a scale downward from there. So sufficient for that criteria would be images were central to the ad campaign or design piece, but not central to the campaign itself. Needs revision, images were of secondary nature to the design piece or ad campaign and not central to the viewer's experience. And finally, no evidence in this criteria would be images were inappropriate and added nothing to the design piece or ad campaign. You can see that we go in a scale downward. As you can see, stage 2 is very deceptive. It looks very small, but it packs a ton of content. And this is content which is absolutely essential to the development of the rest of the template. Thank you very much.